Hello, everybody, and welcome to December 12th Trips and Traps. Andy Serling, joined by Eric Donovan.
We have 5 races to bring you on Trips and Traps this week, our final week of racing on the main track as we've moved to the inner track already. But we'll start off by taking a look at a long vacationer coming back to the races here, Riff. This is the first race on last Wednesday. Claimed by David Jacobson out of this race. It was a 20 claimer going 6 furlongs.
I thought all things considered, I mean, this horse was coming back off of a 33-month layoff. It had been just a few months shy of 3 years, actually, I think, since we had seen Riff run last. And I thought all things considered, he broke a little slowly, he's sluggish early. I thought he took himself into the race under really no urging from Mike Luzzi. And I'm not saying he did anything spectacular out there, but for a horse off such a long layoff, and a horse that's now been claimed by David Jacobson, I thought this was a promising effort.
Yeah, it was a good effort, and next time out, obviously he'll have a race under his belt. He'll be first off the claim for David Jacobson, and he's a horse that didn't run better than he did here. I mean, he finished in the middle of the pack here. He was 5th, beaten about only 4 3/4 lengths in here. So this is a solid effort coming back off that long layoff.
Yeah, and I don't disagree per se with what the chart says when it just, I guess the chart call is just saved ground to no avail in a sense because he saved ground, but he broke slowly. I don't think it really tells. I'm not saying I'm knocking what the chart said because it's not inaccurate per se, but I think that he showed a lot more life than could have reasonably been expected for a horse off such a long layoff.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, I think all in all, after the start, he does get a pretty good trip in here. He saves ground. There's an honest pace up front. He's down saving ground, but he's inside, and he's clearly, a horse that probably needs a start off that long layoff there. So he'll be better next time out, no doubt about it. It'll be David Jacobson first off the claim, and probably be one of the favorites.
Yeah, but I mean, the horse that was in front the whole way, the favorite won, and the horse that stalked was second in here. So it's not like anybody really closed. And also, you wonder, I mean, what Jacobson saw that he was willing to claim a horse off of a 3-year layoff in this case. I mean, a lot of these horses can't really run at all anymore. So whether he'd seen this horse work in the morning or whatever the case was, he saw enough to see fit to claim it. And the way he does off his claims, that usually seems to work out.
Seems like he just takes shots with horses that have run big races in the past and hopes to get them back to that kind of form.
Well, we'll see if it happens with Riff. This was not a bad effort.
We'll move on to race number 6 from last Wednesday. This is a New York bred maiden claiming race, $25,000 for 2-year-old fillies. We're going to look at the 2. Positive Vibration gets too passive a ride here, in my opinion.
Yeah, a very passive ride. And this is an example. You want to see these apprentices and these younger riders come here. We're talking about the 2 Positive Vibration, who from a pace figure situation, this horse had a real pace advantage in here. And as you can see, under sort of a little urging from the rider, he very easily goes to lead. And, once he makes the lead, the rider can't put his feet in the brakes quick enough. And I don't really understand this. I think once you've established lead, I mean, obviously you don't want the horse to run off on you. And CC Lopez comes outside with a 10 horse, but you have to have a plan. Either you're going to continue forward, or when you've let the other horse go, and CC's an old pro, as we see quite often, he knows what he's doing, he's putting him inside, but the rider is strangling him back. Okay, now you're back, yes, the horse in your flank, but what are you going to do from here, Eric?
Yeah, the whole thing, I mean, if you're going to take him back and you think the 10's going too fast, you don't want to keep up with that horse, you got to make sure you can get outside. You can't be stuck in this position down on the rail where now you're third, you had the lead, now you're third, you're sitting down inside, and you're going to fall victim to, some guys that are race riding here. The 11 horse ridden by Eddie Castro keeps the 2 Positive Vibration inside, and there's just not a whole lot of room to get through on the inside of Recovered either.
And the other thing is that CC drifts it a little bit off the rail, so he suckers him to the inside, but then he tightens things up a little bit. And the fact is that the rider, Esquivel, has to realize this is going to happen to him. You have to realize who you're dealing with. These guys are old pros. CC Lopez knows every trick in the book, and that's why, and I mean that as a major compliment to him as a rider, and that's why he's successful in what he does. And they pin him down in there, and the fact is that Esquivel didn't really have a plan. Once you let that guy go, you've got to have a plan, or you've got to continue going forward. And this is a horse that should have won. Nothing against Margaret Owenson, who got the absolute perfect trip and a perfect ride from Wilmar Garcia, but Positive Vibration, this was a race for her to win. Now, having said that, the field may be a little tougher next time.
Maybe a little tougher, and this was the spot. I mean, this was the spot where this horse looked like, a possible pace setter here in this race, and, figured to work out a good trip, and it just didn't happen. So, we'll see. I mean, obviously the way that she finished up there, she's okay, but we'll see next time out. She's probably going to be a shortish type of price off this kind of trip, and the improved effort dropping in for the $25,000. So, you got to weigh all that stuff next time out. Want 1 or a 2 shorter price.
No, but you wish this horse had gone forward and maybe a little faster early. Maybe that intimidates CC from sending his horse aggressively. Maybe she can't really even keep up. And I just, you watch it and you understand there's growing pains, but you want to see there's some progression as a rider, and that's what you need to see from apprentice riders, the ones that learn from their mistakes, and that's something we've seen so much from Manny Franco.
Well, let's move on to race number 7 from Thursday now. Starter allowance optional claimer for fillies and mares going 6 furlongs. Looking at a horse that projected to be one of the speeds in here, the one Madre de Tudicapi is off a few lengths slow.
This almost feels like a sort of chapter on what do you do with this horse, because the one Madre de Tudicapi, as you've said, is a speed type horse and also a cheaper horse. She's never been competitive against the likes of this. She was completely outclassed in this race and was probably an underlay at 18-1. She breaks 2 to 3 lengths slow, drops completely out of the race. Every other time she's run her career, when she hasn't been near the pace early, she's just stayed in last. And suddenly in a race where essentially the pace held together fairly well, she makes this enormous run, got a 76 buyer, ran the best race she's ever run. Where did this race come from, and how do you deal with it going forward?
That's a good question. I mean, I got to imagine with the way she ran this race today, this race that we're showing on Thursday, that they're going to try to take her back next time because it was her best effort. I mean, even if she has speed now, if you're the connections, you got to say, okay, she ran this remarkable race last time, coming from off the pace. We didn't know she could do that. We got to try that again, I guess, right?
I totally agree. Now, on the other hand, she made it easy for them by getting left. As you see her start to make this run, and just note that nobody else makes a run. Yes, she saved ground most of the turn and then angled out, but still, this horse puts in a serious run, and this was not a slow, weak race. This effort, when you consider she got left a little bit, is lengths better than any race she has ever run. Is she going to run it next time, or was this just some sort of odd, aberrational effort?
Yeah, that's the key question here. I mean, she's a 3-year-old filly late in the year. She'll probably be, make one more start of 3 maybe. Perhaps she'll wait till her 4-year-old season. But there's, reason to believe that she could still be improving at this stage of the game for her.
Yeah, maybe she is. No, I don't have the answer to this. And one of the reasons I wanted to show it was, it's sort of a general question. I think it's applicable to other situations. What do you do with a horse that in an odd situation runs a lifetime best race? In a relatively low-profile connections, can they get this horse to come back and run as well? And how do they want to ride her in the future? Because obviously, as you said, the best race she ever ran, she came from dead last, circumstance or not.
She'll probably be better off this race. And the one thing, I don't want to sit here and knock her because she has a lot of horses that, are long shots, and she doesn't have the best horses on the grounds. But Jenna Antonucci, I find it hard to trust her horses from start to start that they're going to run the same race they did last time.
Well, that's one of the problems in general with handicapping is will a trainer, and it's tough, and that's when we talk about trainers that are able to get their horses to run back, and it's a very, very difficult thing to do, and even the ones with lower percentages, and as you say, you have to have good horses in your barn, whatever kind of horseman you are, and it's not a knock on her. Her horses will run well if she has good horses, but can you get horses to run consistently well, or are they going to run well one time and then not as well subsequent starts? I don't know what to do with this horse, but I know this effort was a vastly improved effort.
It was indeed. Now we'll go to the 6th. This is race number 7. 2 other than allowance optional claimer for fillies and mares going 6 furlongs. We'll take a look at the head onto the start here first.
Yeah, I thought this was a great example. We're not going to show much more of this, of the pro CC Lopez. He's on the 7, and he comes out at the start. He knows the 1A in his flank is the horse that he has to deal with both early and in general in this race. And by coming out a little bit at the start and bumping into that horse, he knocks a little off stride. I think it makes it much easier for him to establish the lead. Lion Dine's running Friday. It's not a big deal. The horse we really want to focus on Expression, but we'll talk about the gate stuff after we talk about this race, as Expression will drop all the way back in a race where nobody gained any ground.
Yeah, this was a race where the 3 speeds ran 1, 2, 3 around the track, and Expression actually gained a little bit of ground, not much, but was able to, of all the horses from off the pace, was the one that was able to make a mile type of rally in here.
Expression's a horse that we actually were able to make some money on last year when she got dirtied up form, and she's putting together a little bit resume on dirtied up form right now because she's good enough to be contentious in this field. I mean, she wasn't going to run the 94 buyer. The winner of this race ran her 96 buyer, whatever. But in a normal situation on a dry track in a fairly run race, she's good enough to be better than contentious in this field. But when they're wiring the field and horses aren't making runs and you end up making a 4-wide run from dead last, Eric, you're not going to win.
No, and the whole thing with this race was, it projected to have a little bit of speed in here with the 7 My Place Anytime and Lion DNA. So you thought, okay, well, Expression should get a fair enough pace. It just didn't turn out that way, as now she's forced to make a 4-wide rally in a race where there's 3 speeds are 1, 2, 3, and they're going to stay that way around the track.
Yeah, and she actually makes a little bit of a run in here. She loses by less than 7 lengths. Here she is on the outside. And these are the kind of things that I like, because if they're not going to win, you want to bet them going forward, and you want them to look the worse the better in a certain way. Because you know Expression, when he runs her good race, she's good enough to be competitive in a race like this. So when things don't go her way, I want her to have a lousy-looking performance, because you can reasonably dismiss this effort. In reality, she actually runs okay, all things considered. The third horse, Let Me Entertain You, hugged the rail the whole way. She was part of the pace. The other thing I want to talk about is what happened at the gate. And, you know, once again, Cece Lopez rode the winner. He is an excellent professional rider and knows what he can get away with. But there's been a lot of talk about what goes on at the gate, because we have a long history in this game and consistently of not adjudicating things that happen out of the gate. But what is the difference between a sort of random horses that, you know, maybe duck in, duck out for a brief second, the rider straightens them out, and perhaps more of an intent because I know I can get away with it?
It's a good question, and I think it's hard to determine a lot from watching. I mean, in this kind of situation where, you know, clearly the 1A line DNA was the other speed, that to worry about getting out and getting that little bit of edge and giving him a little bit of a, you know, not a major bump, but, you know, a little brush coming out of the gate there. I mean, stewards could call him in and he could easily say, well, you know, the horse broke a little bit sideways coming out of the gate. I tried to straighten him out, but, yeah, you know, he touched that horse a little bit.
Yeah, and once again, a rider's job is to get his horse to the best possible finish he can get. And if you can do that within the rules, you are doing your job and doing it well. And that's a case of Cece Lopez doing his job and doing it well. But when is it not really fair? And I think that's the sort of predicament we're in, and we'll look at in the next race at the start, is when do situations happen at the start that maybe they were preventable, and in fact they did factor into the outcome, and maybe they should be actionable. Not saying necessarily disqualifications. Maybe the stewards need to look at these things, because every incident out of the gate isn't the same.
This is true, and we'll take a look at our next incident out of the gate, the sixth race, rather, from December 7th, the State Bred Special Weight for 2-year-olds going a mile. Yeah,
the eventual winner, the 6, Deceived, and the eventual third place finish, the first-timer, Vagarius. Now, you're going to see Vagarius breaks maybe a step slow, but so does 6. Now, the 6 will come out at him. Now, this is stuff that happens at the gate, but the 6 continues to come out on him. He's forcing him into the 8, pinching off the 7, Vagarius. Now, the question is, and I'm not blaming Arad Ortiz, you can see he's having serious trouble. He's almost half off of his horse. What is the situation going on here, and is this something that needs to be looked at? Now, there was an inquiry in here, and the stewards once again ruled, I would assume, that you're coming out of the gate, blah, 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 and that's fine. But was it a legitimate gate foul, or was there maybe something that could have been done about it? As you're going to see, Vagarius basically checks out of the race, Eric.
Yeah, Vagarius, I mean, a very tough spot for a first European, going, you know, a mile to start in the debut, and then you get in some trouble over a wet track early on. You see him climbing a little bit in the early stages here, not really particularly handling the track all that well.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he ran very well for a first-time starter, and he wasn't going to beat Deceived, and I don't think anybody would suggest he would have, but he certainly would have been second here without the early trouble, and this was a promising effort for a firster. You know, it's a tough job. I mean, you know, everybody sits around, and we're all armchair stewards, we're all armchair jockeys. It's a lot easier to look at the films and say, well, you could have done this, you could have done that. I think it's a general question. It's not in any way meant as a criticism. It's more a discussion point of what are considered gate fouls and what are considered just sort of random incidents that can't be stopped coming out of the gate. Because in general, I agree. If it's just a random, you know, havoc coming out of the gate, you shouldn't be penalizing anybody.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what makes it hard to tell. I mean, you know, you saw Urad trying to, you know, control this horse early on in the race from the head on there. He's, you know, leaning halfway off on the left side of the horse to try to get the horse straightened out. So, you know, sometimes it's tough to tell. Sometimes in an incident like this, I think it was, you know, just a young horse, 2-year-olds, wet track, you know, kind of a tricky weather day as well with a little bit of wind involved. So, you know, you just don't know in these situations. And here comes the 7, and Vagarius making a run from last year.
Yeah, and, you know, lost in all of this was a nice first-out effort by Vagarius. Deceived was a runoff winner, and it was a wet track. Now, look, any number of these horses might have run better because of the wet track, but I got to say, I thought the way Vagarius ran, it's not as though anybody else was making a big run, and made a nice sweeping run in here, and he's a horse that might be okay. I mean, you're also talking about a first-time starter going a mile in the wet to boot.
Yeah, I agree. I think this was a solid effort considering everything that went on, and a second time out, he should definitely benefit from this type of performance.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be any kind of big price, but if he continues forward from this, he should be A-okay. And also, don't forget, we don't know that he's necessarily slow early. He was interfering with the start. He might have been right in the thick of things, so it could have broken much differently. Interesting races, and I think interesting discussions in general about what goes on in races, and likely discussions, and we always want your help. Trips and Traps at NYRA.com.
That's it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next week.